Hello, and we are back. We are still on day 2 of our 100 Days of Code challenge. And I thought, you know what, why not continue? Because we kind of left our applied visual design section kind of unfinished. And I don't generally like to leave things unfinished. I thought, let's just continue where we left off. Might as well, right? We've already done our hour for the day, so we've technically completed day 2. But there's no harm in pushing forward. There's a lot of courses still left in the curriculum that I'd like to get done as soon as I can, because I'm really enjoying it. I really want to get to the JavaScript section. That to me is what I just love in general. Because obviously HTML is fun and all, web design is fun, but what really gets me is, you know, the challenge, the excitement of building something with pure code. Code even. And I've never really been one for art. In a way, I have a good eye for it, I know what looks good, but other than that, it's just, you know, not something I've really ever done. So we're going to try our best. We're going to see how that goes. So we're going to learn how CSS and keyframes and animation properties work. So to animate an element, you need to know about the animation's properties and the @keyframe rule. The animation properties control how the animation should behave, and the keyframe rule controls what happens during the animation. There are 8 animation properties in total. This challenge will keep it simple and cover the 2 most important ones first. Animation name sets the name of the animation, which is later used by keyframes to tell CSS which rules go with which animation. And then the animation duration sets the length of time for the animation. Keyframes is how to specify exactly what happens within the animation over the duration. This is done by giving CSS properties for specific frames during the animation, with percentages ranging from 0% to 100%. If you compare this to a movie, the CSS properties for 0% is how the element displays in the opening scene. The CSS properties for 100% is how the element appears at the end, right before the credits roll. Then CSS applies the magic to transition the element over the given duration to act out the scene. Here's an example to illustrate the usage of keyframes and animation properties. So we've got a colorful animation name for a duration of 3 seconds, okay. And in that time it starts with blue and it ends off with yellow, so it's kind of just gonna transition, I guess. That's pretty cool. Interesting. Hey, the life's beautiful! This is quite exciting, isn't it? I think it really is. Just trying to figure something out real quick. Cool. So for the element with the animation ID, the code snippet above sets the animation name to colorful and sets the animation duration to 3 seconds. Then the keyframes rule links to the animation properties with the name colorful. It sets the color to blue at the beginning of the animation, which will transition to yellow by the end of the animation. You aren't limited to only beginning and end transitions. You can set properties for the element for any percentage between 0 and 100%. Create an animation for the element with the ID rectangle, or rect, by setting the animation name to rainbow and animation duration to 4 seconds. Next, declare a keyframe rule and set the background color at the beginning of the animation 0% to blue, the middle of the animation 50% to green, and the end animation 100% to yellow. Okay, so let's do that now. We basically need to give it a animation name, and they want us to call it rainbow. And the duration is going to be 4 seconds. And think we can do that there, right? And then we're gonna do at keyframes rainbow, and at 0%, oops, they want us to start. We're gonna have background color. Was it blue that we start with? Yeah, blue. Okay, so it starts with that. Then at 50%, we need to have what is it at 50%? We need, where'd my autocomplete go? I'm gonna get used to that now they took it away. No! Background, this is green, not freen. And then at 100%, we are going to have background color set to yellow. And then we can observe the animation here. Wow. Oh, wait, we messed, where's the blue? Did I mess up? Why is it black now? Or did it stop playing? There we go. Blue to green to yellow. And then it just stops. Oh, okay, because there's no repeat or anything. Wonder what happens if you do it 10 seconds. Does it mean it just transitions slower? Yeah, it does. So if we had like a second transition, it would just be like... Okay, I think that's it. We did everything we needed to do. Yep, there we are. Okay, so use CSS animation to change the hover state of a button. You can use CSS at keyframes to change the color of a button in its hover state. Interesting. We could just use that with like button hover, couldn't we? And just change the color. I wonder why we need animation for it. I guess we'll find out now. Note that ms stands for milliseconds, where 1000 ms is equal to 1 second milliseconds, yeah. Okay, so change the background color of the button element. When you hover, so it's this one. Okay, so we're gonna do at keyframe. But do we have to specify? I think we do. Is it at keyframes button hover? Is that valid? I wasn't really paying attention now. And then we do background. Wait. Then we needed 100%. Then we needed background color. What happened to my autofill? I really miss my autofill. It's like one thing you don't realize that you miss until it's gone. Okay. So I may have messed that up. We're just gonna have to check. Is it button hover or just button itself? It should have been... It should be simple enough. The at keyframe should use the animation name, background color. Or did I mess this up and I was supposed to put that under there? Is that the issue that I have right now? It's the issue with trying to do this right at the end of the day, huh? I guess go back to trial and error. So at keyframes. Oh, that's why I got confused, because I'm so used to background color being actual background color. We need to call at keyframes and the animation name, wasn't it? So if I call at keyframes background color, right? That's it. There we go. That was confusing for a moment, because I thought that was the background color itself, you know, because that's how you set the property to change the background color. I would have just called that like, yeah, like button, like that's random. Anyway, so at keyframes, the name of the animation, and then at 100% change the background color. That should be it. There we go. Took us a little bit. Modify full mode of an animation. That's great, but it doesn't work right yet. Notice how the animation resets after 500 milliseconds. Yeah, I did. Causing the button to revert back to the original color. You want the button to stay highlighted. This can be done by setting the animation full mode property to forwards. The animation full mode specifies the style applied to an element when the animation is finished. You can set it like so. Animation full mode forwards. Set the animation full mode property of button hover to forwards. So how about that? Wait, did I do something wrong? Filet! There we go. That's cool. So if you do backwards, is backwards a thing? So I'm always curious, and like, it just resets it. Either backwards doesn't exist or it goes back. Maybe that's not a thing. But there we are. Create movement. Oh no, it's moving! It's moving by itself! Create movement using CSS animation. When elements have a specified position, such as fixed or relative, the CSS offset properties right, left, top and bottom can be used in an animation rules to create movement. As shown in the example below, you can push the item downwards, then upwards by setting the top property of the 50% keyframe to 50 pixels, but have it set to 0 pixels for the first and last keyframe. Add a horizontal motion to the div animation using the left offset property. Add to the keyframe rules so rainbow starts at 0 pixels at 0%, moves to 25 pixels at 50%, and ends at -25 at 100%. Don't replace the top property in the editor. The animation should have both vertical and horizontal movement. Okay, add horizontal to the div animation. So rainbow starts at 0 pixels. Oh, okay. We need to use the left. Wait, so am I overthinking this? Is it literally as simple as just going left 0 pixels, left 25 pixels, and left minus 25 pixels? Is that literally it? Because I was... Yeah, I was. Wow. Okay. Create visual direction by fading an element from left to right. For this challenge, you'll change the opacity of an animated element so it gradually fades as it reaches the right side of the screen. In the displayed animation, the round element with the gradient background moves to the right by the 50% mark of the animation per the keyframe rule. Target the element with the ID of ball and add the opacity property set to 0.1 at 50% so the element fades as it moves to the right. Okay. So fade, where's the animation name? There it is. Animation name fade. So there's fade. So left is 60%. Am I overthinking it again? Just opacity 0.1? Yeah. Animate elements continually using an infinite animation count. The previous challenges covered how to use some of the animation properties and the keyframe rule. Another animation property is the animation iteration count, which allows you to control how many times you'd like to loop through the animation. Here's an example. In this case, the animation will stop after running 3 times, but it's possible to make the animation run continuously by setting that value to infinite. To keep the ball bouncing on the right on a continuous loop, change the animation iteration count property to infinite. So we're literally just going to change it to infinite? Or do we use the symbol? I assume we just type in infinite, right? There we go. Make a CSS heartbeat using an infinite animation count. Here's one more continuous animation example with animation iteration count property that uses the heart you designed in a previous challenge. It wasn't me, but thanks though. The 1 second long heartbeat animation consists of 2 animated pieces. The heart elements, including the before and after pieces, are animated to change size using the transform property, and the background div is animated to change its color using the background property. Keep the heart beating by adding the animation iteration count property for both the back class and the heart class and setting the value to infinite. Okay, so the back class needs animation iteration count infinite, and the heart it's amazing what you can really achieve. Wow, I love that. You could literally make a game with just CSS and HTML. It's crazy. Gone are the days of Flash. Now I understand why the new standard came out, CSS3 and HTML5. Animate elements at variable rates. There are a variety of ways to alter the animation rates of similarly animated elements. So far this has been achieved by applying an animation iteration count property and setting keyframe rules. To illustrate, the animation on the right consists of 2 stars that each decrease in size and opacity at the 20% mark in the keyframes rule, which creates the twinkle animation. You can change the keyframes rule for one of the elements so the stars twinkle at different rates. Alter the animation rate for the element with the class name of star1 by changing its keyframe rule to 50%. Okay, so instead of 20 like the other one, 50. Hey, they twinkle at different rates. Some stars those are, huh? I love the gradient though, wow. It's like the sky. That is so pretty. Animate multiple elements at variable rates. In the previous challenge you changed the animation rates for 2 similarly animated elements by altering their keyframe rules. You can achieve the same goal by manipulating the animation duration of multiple elements. In an animation running in the code editor there are 3 stars in the sky that twinkle at the same rate on a continuous loop. To make them twinkle at different rates you could set the animation duration property to different values for each element. Set the animation duration of the elements with the classes star1, star2 and star3 to 1 second, 0.9 seconds and 1.1 respectively. Okay. So animation duration of 1 second, that's fine. 0.9 and 1.1. It still like feels in order though, doesn't it? Feels a bit jarred. Like, But that's what we needed to do, so change animation timing with keywords. In CSS animations, the animation timing function property controls how quickly an animated element changes over the duration of the animation. If the animation is a car moving from point A to point B in a given time, your animation duration, the animation timing function says how the car accelerates and decelerates over the course of the drive. There are a number of predefined keywords available for popular options. For example, the default value is ease, which starts slow, speeds up in the middle, and then slows down again in the end. Other options include ease out, which is quick in the beginning, then slows down, ease in, which is slow in the beginning, then speeds up at the end, or linear, which applies a constant animation speed throughout. For the elements with the ID of ball 1 and ball 2, add an animation timing function property to each and set ball 1 to linear and ball 2 to ease out. Notice the difference between how the elements move. Okay. So ball 1, we do animation timing function to linear, animation timing function to ease out. Okay. So this is linear, it's constant, this is fast in, slow out. It's kind of cool. All of this is cool. Learn how Bezier curves work. Why is it French all of a sudden? The last challenge introduced the animation timing function property and a few keywords that change the speed of an animation over its duration. CSS offers an option other than keywords that provides even finer control of how the animation plays out through the use of Bezier curves. In CSS animations, Bezier curves are used with a cubic Bezier function. The shape of the curve represents how the animation plays out. The curve lives on a 1x1 coordinate system. The x-axis of the coordinate system is the duration of the animation, think of it as a time scale, and the y-axis is a change in the animation. The cubic Bezier function consists of 4 main points that sit on this 1x1 grid. Point 0, point 1, point 2, and point 3. Point 0 and 3 are set for you. They are the beginning and the end points, which are always located respectively at the origin 0, 0 and 1, 1. You set the x and y values for the other 2 points, and where you place them in the grid dictates the shape of the curve for the animation to follow. This is done in CSS by declaring the x and y values of the P1 and P2 anchor points in the form x1, y1, x2, y2. Pulling it all together, here's an example of a Bezier curve in CSS code. Okay. In the example above, the x and y values are equivalent for each point, which, if you remember from geometry class, results in a line that extends from the origin to point 1, 1. This animation is linear change of an element during the length of an animation and is the same as using the linear keyword. In other words, it changes at a constant speed. For the element with the ID of ball 1, change the value of the animation timing function property from linear to its equivalent cubic Bezier function value. Use the point values given in the example above. Okay. And that should be it. Use a Bezier curve to move a graphic. A previous challenge discussed the ease out keyword that describes an animation change that speeds up first and then slows down at the end of the animation. On the right, the difference between the ease out keyword for the blue element and linear keyword for the red element is demonstrated. Okay, so similar animation progressions to the ease out keyword can be achieved by using a custom cubic Bezier curve function. In general, changing the P1 and P2 anchor points drives the creation of different Bezier curves, which controls how the animation progresses through time. Here's an example of a Bezier curve using values to mimic the ease out style. Remember that all cubic Bezier functions start with point 0 at 0, 0 and end with point 3 at 1, 1. In this example, the curve moves faster through the y-axis, starts at 0, goes to P1, y value of 0, then goes to P2, y value of 1. Then it moves through the x-axis, 0 to start, then 0 for P1, up to 0.58 for P2. As a result, the change in the animated element progresses faster than the time of the animation for that segment. Towards the end of the curve, the relationship between the change in x and y values reverses. The y value moves from 1 to 1, no change, and the x value moves from 0.58 to 1, making the animation change progress slower compared to the animation duration. To see the effect of this Bezier curve in action, change the animation timing function of the element ID of red to a cubic Bezier function. And we're going to have them at 0, 0, 0.58, and 1. Woo! Did you see that? Did you see how fast I went? Beep beep! Look at this ball! Can we make it go even faster? Oh god, it's so fast! Like, can you see it? It's like, oh god, we lost the ball! This is too much fun. Oh, okay, anyway, back to 1. Nice and slow. Okay, so what happens if you change this? Because it like starts like really fast. And what if you do that? It doesn't really affect it. Interesting. And then if I had to start this at like... okay. So it's that initial like start, so it can be like... Well, not really. Thought it would be something else. Cool. There we are. Make motion more natural using a Bezier curve. This challenge animates an element to replicate the movement of a ball being juggled. Prior challenges covered the linear and ease-out cubic Bezier functions, or curves. However, neither depicts the juggling movement accurately. You need to customize a Bezier curve for this. The animation timing function automatically loops at every keyframe when the animation iteration count is set to infinite. Since there is a keyframe rule set in the middle of the animation duration at 50%, it results in 2 identical animation progressions at the upward and downward movements of the ball. The following cubic Bezier curve simulates a juggling movement. Notice that the value of y2 is larger than 1. Although the cubic Bezier curve is mapped on a 1 coordinate system, and it can only accept x values from 0 to 1, the y value can be set to numbers larger than 1, yeah, which we tested and we got like really insanely fast ones. This results in a bouncing movement that is ideal for simulating the juggling. Change the value of the animation timing function of the element with the ID green to a cubic Bezier function with x1, y1, x2, y2 values set respectively to those values. Okay. So 0.311, these are some pretty specific values. .649. How does it look now? Oh, like comes down slow. It's almost like I guess, yeah. Feels almost like it's resisting something, like boing, coming back up again. You're almost like a bungee, you know, if you like had to take a bungee and you jump down on the cord, then you have that like free fall all the way down, and then slowly you come back up again. But that's not for us to decide. We're just doing the challenge, and we succeeded that. Whew! Wow! So we completed that section. Next up is the introduction to applied accessibility. Accessibility generally means having web content and a user interface that can be understood, navigated, and interacted with by a broad audience. This includes people with visual, auditory, mobility, or cognitive disabilities. Websites should be open and accessible to everyone, I agree, regardless of a user's abilities or resources. Some users rely on assistive technology such as screen reader or voice recognition software. Other users may be able to navigate through a site only using a keyboard. Keeping the needs of various users in mind when developing your project can go a long way towards creating an open web. Here are 3 general concepts this section will explore throughout the following challenges. Have well-organized code that uses appropriate markup. Ensure text alternatives exist for non-text and visual content. Create an easily navigated page that's keyboard friendly. Having accessible web content is an ongoing challenge. A great resource for your projects going forward is the W3 Consortium's Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG AG for short. They set the international standard for accessibility and provide a number of criteria you can use to check your work. Let's move forward. Add a text alternative to images for visually impaired accessibility. It's likely you've seen an alt attribute on an image tag in other challenges. Alt text describes the content of the image and provides a text alternative. This helps in case the image fails to load or can't be seen by a user. It's also used by search engines to understand what an image contains, to include it in search results. Do you guys remember this? Like back in the day when you used to use Internet Explorer, seeing this. I think it was IE4, IE5 that I remember using. And like wanting to play these flash games and just seeing these things broken. Oh. So what we need to do is add an alt attribute in the image tag that explains Camper Cat is doing karate. Hey, we got our waterfall back. Okay, so what explains Camper Cat is doing karate? So we could just say Camper Cat doing their epic karate moves. How about that? Is that good? Know when alt text should be left blank. In the last challenge you learned that including an alt attribute on image tags is mandatory. However, sometimes images are grouped with a caption already describing them, or are used for decoration only. In these cases, alt text may seem redundant or unnecessary. In situations when an image is already explained with text content, or does not add meaning to a page, the image still needs an alt attribute, but it can be set to an empty string. Here's an example. Background images usually fall under the decorative label as well. However, they are typically applied with CSS rules, and therefore not part of the markup screen reader's process. For images with a caption, you may still want to include alt text, since it helps search engines catalog the content of the image. Camper Cat has coded a skeleton page for the blog part of his website. He's planning to add a visual break between his two articles with a decorative image of a samurai sword. Add an alt attribute to the image tag and set it to an empty string. Note that the image source doesn't link to an actual file. Don't worry that there are no swords showing in the display. So we're going to just change the alt to blank. Oh, so if you don't have an alt that displays the broken image? That's so cool. So now I understand why you need an alt. Use headings to show hierarchical relationships of content. Oh, there's multiple ones that you can actually have. So headings H1 through H6 are workhorse tags that help provide structure and labeling to your content. Screen readers can be set to read only the headings on a page, so the user gets a summary. This means it is important for the heading tags in your markup to have semantic meaning and relate to each other, not be picked merely for their size values. Semantic meaning means that the tag you use around content indicates the type of information it contains. If you were writing a paper with an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, it wouldn't make much sense to put the conclusion as a subsection of the body in your outline. Okay, so Camper Cat wants a page on his site dedicated to becoming a ninja. Help him fix the headings so his markup gives semantic meaning to the content and shows the proper parent-child relationship of his sections. Change all H5 tags to the proper heading level to indicate they are subsections of the H2 ones. Okay. So the H5s need to be H3 to follow semantic. I guess that makes sense. And we also have to close all of them off again. What a mish. There we go. That should be it. Jump straight to the content using the main element. HTML5 introduced a number of new elements, I remember that. By default, a browser renders these elements similarly to the humble div. We're just calling it humble now. It is quite humble. However, using them, where appropriate, gives additional meaning in your markup. The tag name alone can indicate the type of information it contains, which adds semantic meaning to that content. The main tag also has an embedded landmark feature that assistive technologies can use to quickly navigate to the main content. If you've ever seen a jump to main content link at the top of a page, using a main tag automatically gives assistive devices that functionality. Wow, okay. Campercat has some big ideas for his ninja weapons page. Help him set up his markup by adding opening and closing main tags between the header and footer. Okay, so just main, just like that. That's literally all you want me to do. Fair enough. Wrap content in the article element. Article is another one of the new HTML5 elements that adds semantic meaning to your markup. Article is a sectioning element and is used to wrap independent, self-contained content. The tag works well with blog entries, forum posts, or news articles. Determining whether content can stand alone is usually a judgment call, but there are a couple simple tests you can use. Ask yourself, if you removed all surrounding context, would that content still make sense? Similarly for text, would the content hold up if it were in an RSS feed? Okay. The section element is also new with HTML5 and has slightly different semantic meaning than article. An article is for standalone content and a section is for grouping thematically related content. They can be used with each other as needed. For example, if a book is the article, then each chapter is a section. Okay. When there's no relationship between groups of content, then use a div. Div groups content. Section groups related content. Article groups independent, self-contained content. Okay, that makes sense. Got it now. Change the div tag to use an article instead. There we go. And that's pretty much all. The next HTML5 element that adds semantic meaning and improves accessibility is the header tag. It's used to wrap introductory information or navigation links for its parent tag and works well around content that's repeated at the top on multiple pages. Header is meant for use in the body tag of your HTML element. This is different than the head element, which contains the page's title, meta information, etc. Right. Your code should have one header tag. There you go. And I guess we close it off here, right? Wait. Change the top div that currently contains the h1 to a header. Okay, so that's not what you meant. You want me to change h1 to header. Gotta read that again. Header shares the embedded landmark feature you saw with main allowing assistant. Okay, so that's the header. Okay. That's not what we wanted to do either. We want the div to be the header, because divs are the new elements that I gotta wrap myself around. I'm not used to that. Okay, so divs we used to group things now can be replaced with elements. So main is your content. You have sections and articles within them. Articles are self-contained. Sections are grouped of same information. So this is all about stealth. Okay. And then you got the header. Make screen reader navigation easier with the nav landmark. The nav element is another HTML5 item with the embedded landmark feature for easy screen reading or screen reader navigation. This tag is meant to wrap around the main navigation links in your page. If there are repeated site links at the bottom of the page, it isn't necessary to mark up those with a nav tag as well. Using a footer covered in the next challenge is sufficient. Campercat includes navigation links at the top of his training page, but wrapped them in a div. Oh, Campercat. Change the div to a nav tag to improve the accessibility on his page. I wonder what happens if they're not supported, the elements. Is there a fallback? Do they just get turned to divs? One would hope so, right? Because I haven't really said anything about fallbacks, or did I miss that part? There we go. Make screen reader navigation easier with the footer landmark. Similarly to header and nav, the footer element has a built-in landmark feature that allows assistive devices to quickly navigate to it. It's primarily used to contain copyright information or links to related documents that usually sit at the bottom of a page. Campercat's training page is making good progress. Change the div he used to wrap his copyright information at the bottom of the page to a footer element. Okie dokie, there you go. Improve accessibility of audio content with the audio element. HTML5's audio element gives semantic meaning when it wraps sound or audio stream content in your markup. Audio content also needs a text alternative to be accessible to people who are deaf or hard of hearing. This can be done with nearby text on the page or a link to a transcript. The audio tag supports the controls attribute. This shows the browser default play, pause, and other controls and supports keyboard functionality. This is a Boolean attribute, meaning it doesn't need a value. It's present on the tag, turns the setting on. Here's an example. Okay, so multimedia content usually has both visual and auditory components. It needs synchronized captions and a transcript so users with visual or auditory impairments can access it. Generally, a web developer is not responsible for creating the captions or transcript, but needs to know how to include them. Time to take a break from Campercat and meet fellow camper Xerxes, a champion of accessibility and a screen reader user. To hear a clip of his screen reader in action, add an audio element after the paragraph. Include the controls attribute, then place a source tag inside the audio tags with the source attribute set to screen reader and type attribute set to audio MPEG. The audio clip may sound fast and be difficult to understand, but that is a normal speed for screen reader users. Okay. So, first steps. We need to add a audio. Does it give us an ID? We can just copy this in. It's so cool. It didn't give us a specific ID, did it? Source control. The source is going to be set to this. We only need one of them because we don't have a secondary source. Might as well clean this up. What else do we need to do? Audio MPEG. Oh god, that's terribly fast. Wow. I have no idea what that's going. I'm gonna have to get a screen reader. Improve chart accessibility with the figure element. HTML5 introduced the figure element along with the related fig caption. Used together, these items wrap a visual representation like an image, diagram, or chart along with its caption. This gives a twofold accessibility boost by semantically grouping related content and providing a text alternative that explains the figure. Wow, it's pretty neat. I love that. So fig caption goes inside the figure tags and can be combined with other elements. So we got figure, then we got our image, and then we give the caption, which is a caption of what we're basically seeing. Campercat is hard at work creating a stacked bar chart showing the amount of time per week to spend training in stealth, combat, and weapons. Help him structure his page better by changing the div tag he used to a figure tag. Okay, so change the div tag to a figure tag, right? And the p tag that surrounds the caption to a fig caption. There we are. That should be it. Improve form field accessibility with the label element. This is so much to take into account in terms of accessibility. Like, definitely you want to get it right the first time when you create things, so something to keep in mind. Improving accessibility with semantic HTML markup applies to using both appropriate tag names as well as attributes. The value of the for attribute must be the same as the value of the ID attribute of the form control. Yeah, remember, because you're saying for so and so. I also won't know for which one it is. So how do they read it? The label tag wraps the text for a specific form control item, usually the name or label for a choice. This ties meaning to the item and makes the form more readable. The for attribute on the label tag explicitly associates that label with the form control and is used by screen readers. Campercat expects a lot of interest in his thoughtful blog posts and wants to include an email sign-up form. Add a for attribute on the email label that matches the ID on its input field. So email. So we're going to do we have a form? Yeah, we do have a form. So we're going to do label. Well, we already have a label. Never mind. So we're just going to change label for its ID is email. That should literally be it, huh? There we are. Wrap radio buttons in a field set element for better accessibility. Wow, there's so many of them. The next form topic covers accessibility of radio buttons. Each choice is given a label with a for attribute tying to the ID of the corresponding item as covered in the last challenge. Since radio buttons often come in a group where the user must choose one, there's a way to semantically show the choices are part of a set. The field set tag surrounds the entire grouping of radio buttons to achieve this. It often uses a legend tag to provide a description for the grouping, which is read by screen readers for each choice in the field set element. The field set wrapper and legend tag are not necessary when the choices are self-explanatory, like a gender selection. Using a label with the for attribute for each radio button is sufficient. Here's an example. Okay, so Campercat wants information about the ninja level of his users when they sign up for his email list. He's added a set of radio buttons and learned from our last lesson to use label tags with for attributes for each choice. Go Campercat! However, his code still needs some help. Change the div tag surrounding the radio buttons to a field set. Okay. And change the p tag inside it to a legend. You are now going to become legendary. Done. Add an accessible date picker. Forms often include the input field, which can be used to create several different form controls. The type attribute on this element indicates what type of input will be created. You may notice the text and submit input types in prior challenges, and HTML5 introduced an option to specify a date field. Depending on browser support, a date picker shows up in the input field when it's in focus, which makes filling in a form easier for all users. For older browsers, the type will default to text, so it helps to show users the expected date format in the label or as a placeholder text just in case. I guess that is true. Campercat is setting up a Mortal Kombat tournament and wants to ask his competitors to see what date works best. Add an input tag with a type attribute of date, an ID attribute of pick date, and a name attribute of date. So we need a input type date, right? ID to be pick date and name to be date. Wow. So if I didn't have that, date, no ways. That is so cool. And the name doesn't change anything. ID of pick date. Okay. Standardized times with the HTML5 datetime attribute. Is this going to match it to our local time? Continuing with the datetime theme, HTML5 also introduced a time element along with a datetime attribute to standardize times. This is an inline element that can wrap a date or time on a page. A valid format of that date is held by the datetime attribute. This is the value accessed by assistive devices. Here's an example. Campercat's Mortal Kombat survey results are in. Wrap a time tag around the text Thursday, September the 15th, and add a datetime attribute to it, set to 2016-09-15. Okay, so Thursday's where's Thursday? This one. So we want a time tag. And we're going to add a date time 2016-09-15. Okay, what happened to our Thursday? Oh, I did that thing again. No. Date. Thank you. Which is 2016-09-15 up until here. Okay, so because we would know what Thursday, September 15th is, for the screen reader, it will just read it as what, 2016-09-15. I guess it makes it easier. We got the year in as well. Make elements only visible to a screen reader by using custom CSS. What? So we can reach out to our the individuals who have screen readers. Or you can just like hide things if you know it's not going to work on a screen reader, like fancy animations and stuff. Or no? Well, it depends, I guess, right? Have you noticed that all of the applied accessibility challenges so far haven't used any CSS? I have. This is to show the importance of a logical document outline and using semantically meaningful tags around your content before introducing the visual design aspect. However, CSS magic can also improve accessibility on your page when you want to visually hide content meant only for screen readers. This happens when information is in a visual format like a chart, but screen readers need an alternative presentation like a table to access the data. CSS is used to position the screen reader only elements off the visual area of the browser window. Here's an example of the CSS rules that accomplish this. The following CSS approaches will not do the same thing. Display none or visibility hidden. Hides content for everyone, including screen readers. Right. Zero values for pixel sizes such as these removes that element from the flow of your document, meaning screen readers will ignore it. But isn't that what we want? Campercat created a really cool stacked bar chart for his training page. This one over here. And put the data into a table for his visually impaired. Alright, that's supposed to be the chart and this is the table. for his visually impaired users. The table already has an SR-only class, but the CSS rules aren't filled in yet. Yep. Give the position an absolute value. Okay. There we go. The left a negative 10,000. You're not going to explain why? That seems kind of arbitrary. Do we assume no one is going to have a display of 10,000 pixels wide? Oh, and then one day we have these massive screens and then everything you've hidden is just like boom right there. I just feel that's kind of like a hack, isn't it? Like, there surely should be a better way. But nonetheless, this is what we asked. And the width and height, what should they be? Both 1 pixels. I guess that's essentially what hides it, right? Because if we set 0, it removes this completely. Oh, and then the screen readers won't be able to read it. So we still kind of want it there. We just want it visible for normal users. So let's say I set this to negative 100 as an example. What would we see it as? You see it's still there. So technically if we had width of 10,000, we would see that. We're just hiding it off the screen. So that kind of feels like a hack. Or is it just me? Improve readability with high contrast text. Oh god, that's awful. Low contrast between the foreground and background colors can make it difficult to read the text. Sufficient contrast improves the readability of your content, but what exactly does sufficient mean? The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines recommend at least a 4.5 to 1 contrast ratio for normal text. The ratio is calculated by comparing the relative luminance between 2 colors. This ranges from 1:1 for the same color, or no contrast, to 21:1 for white against black, the strongest contrast. There are many contrast checking tools available online that calculates this ratio for you. Campercat's choice of light gray text on a white background for his recent blog post has a 1.5 to 1 contrast ratio, which doesn't meet the minimum of 4.5. Make it hard to read. Change the color of the text from the current gray to a darker gray to improve the contrast ratio 6:1. Okay, let's see if this ends up being easier to read for us. Oh, that is much better, isn't it? Damn. Okay, now I see why they have that minimum in place. So the darkest would be black, wouldn't it, technically? So that should be like the highest 21:1 ratio, would it be? On a white background? Okay. Let's do it. Avoid color blindness issues by using sufficient contrast. There's so many things to keep in mind. Because yeah, what if you can't see a color? You combine the two and you see green as red and wow. Color is a large part of visual design, but its use introduces 2 accessibility issues. First, color alone should not be used as the only way to convey important information, because screen readers users won't see it. Second, foreground and background colors need sufficient contrast so colorblind users can distinguish between them. Previous challenges covered having text alternatives to address the first issue. The last challenge introduced contrast checking tools to help with the second. The WCAG recommended contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1 applies for color use as well as grayscale combinations. Colorblind users have trouble distinguishing some colors from others, usually in hue, but sometimes lightness as well. You may recall the contrast ratio is calculated using the relative luminance, or lightness, values of the foreground and background colors. In practice, the 4.5 to 1 ratio can be reached by darkening the darker color and lightening the lighter one with the aid of a color contrast checker. Darker colors on the color wheel are considered to be blues, violets and magentas and reds, whereas lighter colors are oranges, yellows, greens and blue-greens. Campercat is experimenting with using color for his blog text and background, but his current combination of a greenish background color with maroon text has 2.5:1 contrast ratio. You can easily adjust the lightness of the colors since he declared them using the CSS HSL property, which stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. By changing the third argument, increase the background color lightness value from 35% to 55% and decrease the color lightness value from 20% to 15%. This improves the contrast to 5.9 to 1. Okay, so we're going from 35 to 55. Okay, that's much lighter. And from 25 to, the lightness to 15. Did that change? I guess it kind of did, didn't it? Slightly. Well, I guess that will help. Those with visual impairments? Avoid color blindness issues by using sufficient contrast. Wait. What happened? Oh, then complete. Your code should only change the lightness value for the text color property to a value of 15. Oh, it's because I undid it. My bad. There we go. Avoid color blindness issues by carefully choosing colors that convey information. Ooh, that's bad. Even for me. There are various forms of color blindness. These can range from a reduced sensitivity to a certain wavelength of light to the inability to see color at all. The most common form is a reduced sensitivity to detect greens. Yeah, I can imagine if that's light and that's light, you would kind of just see like a single tone and you wouldn't be able to read it at all. The only reason we can really see it is because of the color difference. For example, if two similar green colors are the foreground and background color of your content, a colorblind user may not be able to distinguish them. Close colors can be thought of as neighbors on the color wheel, and those combinations should be avoided when conveying important information. Some online color picking tools include visual simulations of how colors appear for different types of color blindness. These are great resources in addition to online contrast checking calculators. Campercat is testing different styles for an important button, but the yellow background color and the green text color are neighboring hues on the color wheel and virtually indistinguishable for some colorblind users. Their similar lightness also fails the contrast ratio checker. Change the text color to a dark blue. Okay. How about that? To solve both problems. That works. Give links meaning by using descriptive link text. Screen readers, users have different options for what type of content their device reads. This includes skipping to or over landmark elements, jumping to the main content, or getting a page summary from the headings. Another option is to only hear the links available on a page. Screen readers do this by reading the link text or what's between the anchor tags. Having a list of click here or read more links isn't helpful. Instead, you should use brief but descriptive text within the A tags to provide more meaning for these users. The link text that Campercat is using is not very descriptive without the surrounding context. Move the anchor tags so they wrap around the text information about batteries instead of click here. But then why would you say click here? Not gonna worry about the semantics, right? There you go. Make links navigatable with HTML access keys. HTML offers the access key attribute to specify a shortcut key, to activate or bring focus to an element. This can make navigation more efficient for keyboard-only users. I would have imagined back in the day you would have had to use JavaScript with like detect keys to try and do something like that. That's so cool that it's built in now. It's particularly useful when it's used with interactive ones. Here's an example. Campercat wants the links around the two blog article titles to have keyboard shortcuts so his site's users can quickly navigate to the full story. Add an access key attribute to both links and set the first one to G for Garfield and the second one to C for Chuck Norris. Okay. Access key G Is it case sensitive? Let's try. So if I click B, oh, I'm not on a screen reader, is that why? Nothing's happening? Oh, note that case matters. Okay, so it does matter. Why did I say B? I meant C. Use tab index to add keyboard focus to an element. The HTML tag index attribute has 3 distinct functions relating to an element's keyboard focus. When it's on a tag, it indicates that element can be focused on. The value, an integer that's positive, negative, or 0, determines the behavior. Certain elements, such as links and form controls, automatically receive keyboard focus when a user tabs through a page. It's in the same order as the elements come in the HTML source markup. This functionality can be given to other elements such as div, span, and paragraph by placing a tab index 0 attribute on them. Here's an example. A negative tab index value indicates that an element is focusable but is not reachable by the keyboard. This method is generally used to bring focus to content programmatically. Oh, I'm flagging so hard right now. Like when a div used for a pop-up window is activated and is beyond the scope of these challenges. Campercat created a new survey to collect information about his users. He knows input fields automatically get keyboard focus, but he wants to make sure his keyboard users pause at the instructions while tabbing through the items. Add a tab index attribute to the P tag and set its value to 0. Bonus, using tab index also enable the CSS pseudoclass focus to work on the P tag. So what happens if I hit tab? Right now it just goes through everything. No. Cool. Okay, so first thing, use tab index to the P tag. This one. Tab index of 0. Okay. Also enable the CSS pseudo class of pfocus to work on the P tag. What? Okay, why wouldn't it work? Should work. Oh, never mind. Using tab index also enables. I thought it's like bonus points do this. Okay, so let's see what happens. Come on. Oh god. I came back here. Oh. Okay. So it's just like... And if we didn't have this, would nothing happen? Yeah, obviously. Wow. So without tab index, we wouldn't have that yellow bit as well, which kind of like highlights the whole point when they're tabbing through. Wouldn't you want to add select your favorite weapons though, as well? And can we add tab index to that? Just want to like test that. And what if we do P focus as well as... Can we do field set focus? Is that gonna work? Doesn't seem like it. Isn't that a field set? Can you not do it that way? Oh, that's a legend. Never mind. Wrong one. Legend focus. Oh, you can! So we go tab, tab, tab. I would have done that as well. And what level ninja you are. Okay, that's cool, but let me undo what I just added. It's good to know. Use tab index to specify the order of a keyboard focus for several elements. The tab index attribute also specifies the exact tab order of elements. This is achieved when the value of the attribute is set to a positive number of 1 or higher. Setting a tab index of 1 will bring keyboard focus to that element first, then it cycles through the sequence of specified tab index values, 2, 3, etc. Before moving to default and tab index 0 items. It's important to note that when the tab order is set this way, it overrides the default order, which uses the HTML source. This may confuse users who are expecting to start navigation from the top of the page. This technique may be necessary in some circumstances, but in terms of accessibility, take care before applying it. Campercat has a search field on his inspirational quotes page that he plans to position in the upper right corner with CSS. He wants the search input and submit form controls to be the first two items in the tab order. Add a tab index. Okay. So what happens if we don't have it right now? I don't get it. What's the issue? There's only two of them. Why would it matter? Add a tab index attribute set to 1 to the search input. Okay, tab index of 1 and tab index of 2. How does that change anything? Oh, it was the first thing that came up, right? Before even anything. Or not? It just like completely skips it. Introduction to the Responsiveness Web Design Challenges. Today, there are many types of devices that can access the web. They range from large desktop computers to small mobile phones. These devices have different screen sizes, resolutions, and processing power. Responsive web design is an approach to designing web content that responds to the constraints of different devices. The page structure and CSS rules should be flexible to accommodate these differences. In general, design the page's CSS to target your target audience. If you expect most of your traffic to be from mobile users, take a mobile-first approach. Then add conditional rules for larger screen sizes. If your visitors are desktop users, then design for larger screens with conditional rules for smaller sizes. CSS gives you the tools to write different style rules, then apply them depending on the device displaying the page. This section will cover the basic ways to use CSS for responsive web design. Create a media query. Media queries are a new technique introduced in CSS3 that changes the presentation of content based on different viewport sizes. The viewport is a user's visible area of a web page and is different depending on the device used to access the site. Media queries consist of a media type, and if that media type matches the type of device that document is displayed on, the styles are applied. You can have as many selectors and styles inside your media query as you want. Here's an example of a media query that returns the content when the device's width is less than or equal to 100 pixels. And the following media query returns the content when the device's height is more than or equal to 350 pixels. Remember, the CSS inside the media query is applied only if the media type matches that of the device being used, right? Add a media query so that the p tag has a font size of 10 pixels when the device's height is less than or equal to 800 pixels. Okay, so at media less than or equal to 800. So max width 800 pixels, and then we're going to specify font size 10 pixels. So if I were to change my browser size now, does that did that change it? Do we see it change? Did I mess up somewhere? Because I'm changing it. Or maybe it's let's do it larger so we can actually see when it happens. Yeah, it's not changing. max width is 800 pixels. That should have worked, right? Because that's then less than or equal to 800 pixels. Because this should be like theoretically what? Less than 800? That's weird. Oh well. I wonder if it's due to the fact that I resized it and it's static, so once it loads it, you have to reload the page or something? Oh, I said max width. I didn't read. We said max height. Oh. Oh, so this is about height now? But that's still not going to change for us, is it? Because here's max height. Yeah. Oh well. Change that to 10 pixels. So that is correct, but it should be 10 pixels. Your P element should have the font size of 10 pixels when the device height is less than or equal to 800 pixels. Why are we struggling? I'm pretty sure this is correct. And we said font size. Oh, because I didn't do freaking... Oh, I didn't apply it to any element. That's so silly. Because I'm just assuming I literally didn't specify what element to apply it to. So P, there we go. So I have to do it like this, don't I? Do we need the double curly braces? I guess, because that's for the P. Like that, right? So then theoretically, if I change this back to 80, yeah, there you go. So once it's 800, we change the size. Ah, so if I change it to 10, so we make it smaller. That doesn't make sense. There we go. Whew! At least we nailed it. Okay, so make an image responsive. Respond to me! Make images responsive with CSS, or making them rather, is actually very simple. Instead of applying an absolute width to an element, you can use max width, 100%. Alright, because it'll be 100% of the space they can fully occupy, right? The max width property of 100% scales the image to fit the width of its container, but the images won't stretch wider than its original width. Okay, so you could have an image that's up to 4K, but it will only display, let's say, 1080p if that's the max I can display. And if you have an 8K display, it will only go up to 4K. That's cool. Setting the display property to block changes the image from an inline element, its default, to a block element on its own line. The height property of auto keeps the original aspect ratio of the image. Okay, add style rules for the image tag to make it responsive to the size of its container. Image, max width, 100%, display, block, height, auto. Does that change anything? Seems so. It's like scaling nicely, but it won't go past this one. So when it's smaller, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That's cool. Use a retina image for higher resolution displays. The simplest way to make your images appear retina and optimize them for retina displays is to define their width and height values as only half of what the original file is. Here's an example of an image that is only using half of the original height and width. Oh, that's smart. But it becomes smaller then, though. Set the width and height of the image tag to half of the original values. In this case, both the original height and the original width are 200 pixels. So image height 100 pixels, width 100 pixels. And if I don't have width set, it doesn't matter. Did it do like order? There's only one of them necessary. But if that's weird. So that's retina. Make typography responsive. Instead of using em or pixels to size text, you can use viewport units for responsive typography. Viewport units, like percentages, are relative units, but they are based off different items. Viewport units are relative to the viewport dimensions, width or height, of a device, and percentages are relative to the size of the parent container element. The four different viewport units are VW? No, I know what that is. That's a brand of car. They're trying to trick us here. It's Volkswagen. VH, the height. Vmin would be 70% of the viewport. Smaller dimension, height versus width, and Vmax would be 100% of the viewport's bigger dimension, height versus width. Okay. 10% of the viewport's width. How is that different compared to just percentages? Relative to the viewport dimensions. Relative to the size of the parent container. Oh, so if I said the container was 400 pixels, 50% of that would be 200, where this is directly... That's smart! Okay. So then you know it's always going to be perfectly centered if you had to use VW or VH or whatever. Set the width of the H2 tag to 80% of the viewport's width, and the width of the paragraphs as 75% of the viewport's smaller dimension. Okay. So viewport's width to 80%. And width of the paragraph, so P, small. I'm confused by what does it mean by smaller dimension? Viewport smaller dimension versus viewport's bigger. Do they mean which one is highest? So like the smaller one of the two? If the width is smaller than the height, then that refers to width. And if the bigger is the height, I'm assuming that's what they mean. So in this case, the smaller. So that's Vmin 75. So 75 Vmin. Why do we have to specify Vmin twice? So how does that change things? Okay. There you go. No. Your H2 tag should have a width of 80. Oh, because I can't use percentage in it, so you gotta use VW and then specify it again. Okay, I got it. Your H2 tag, which it is, Oh, am I missing the point where these were examples or V'd up? Oh, God, I'm gonna kick myself if this is it. So, is it literally width? And I even added an X there, that's so silly. Is it literally width? Oh, silly me. Okay, so how does it change anything if I remove this out now? Oh, the max width. We're always keeping that much minimum. So if I say 25, oh, it's kind of like padding off the side, isn't it? And 95 would be what, 95 of the width. Interesting. Introduction to the CSS Flexbox challenges. Ooh, we have Flexbox challenges? How far are we in this so far? So we did the basic HTML, we did the basic CSS, applied visual design, we nailed it like a boss, applied accessibility, responsive web design principles. Okay, so we completed that. So all that's left is the CSS Flexbox and the CSS Grid, and then we're going to have to tackle responsive web design projects. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to end it off here for now, because I can really feel myself lagging. It's been a really long day, and I feel it's best to do these things as early as I can. So I'm going to try to tackle them in the morning tomorrow. And I really want to be able to focus for Flexbox because I've heard a lot about it. It's going to make life so much easier. That and the grid. So I'd rather tackle that tomorrow. And yeah, then that can be in day 3. We most likely will finish Flexbox and grid tomorrow and be able to even start on one of the projects. It's going to be exciting. A tribute page, a survey form, a product landing page, a technical documentation page, as well as a personal portfolio page. So we're going to have to kind of figure out everything that we've learned. I'm kind of excited, kind of nervous, because I have no idea what to expect. I don't know if they give us any guidelines or any advice, or if it's basically purely blank and they're like, this is what you need, do it. So that's, yeah, that's going to be exciting. I can't wait. So hopefully catch you guys then. Thank you to everyone that's dropped by and everyone that's showing their support. I really appreciate it, especially everyone on Twitter. You guys are amazing. I'm so happy to be a part of this challenge, and I can't wait to see what happens come tomorrow. So until then, bye for now.